Okay, we're going to go over cleaning out the wet end on an FMI pump. So first things you need here is obviously you need your FMI pump. You'll need some sort of degreaser. I use Purple Power, but Simply Green, any kind of degreaser really will work. We also have a lubricant. I'm using ZEP 45, and then some paper towels, and probably we'll need something like channel locks or a very large wrench. Okay, so the first thing we need to do, just to go over real quick, is you see right here on the FMI pump, on the wet end, we have the silver collar. And you should have the ability to spin this pretty easily with your finger. If you have to put a lot of force on it, there's a good chance that it probably needs some cleaning going on, because what's going on is inside of this wet end right here, there's some buildup of some sticky residue. And if this pump is forced to spin when it's got a lot of resistance because of the stickiness, it has a nasty tendency of actually damaging the motor inside the FMI pump, and that's kind of an expensive issue. So to clean it out, this is something I recommend you do at least once a season, depending on what kind of chemicals you're using, maybe more, maybe less, but the average is pretty much once a season. So what we can do here is first we're going to loosen up these two side thumb screws. Once those are loosened up, we can now gently pull on this guy and lift it up, and then slide this out. So right here is the wet end of the FMI pump, and this is the part that we're trying to clean. So what we want to make sure is, when we pull this out, you never want to make sure that this comes out all the way till it falls out. You don't want to do that because you might tear one of the lip seals on the inside, which is why you want to try to keep everything together. Now we are going to disassemble this piece, and we are going to see these seals, but as long as you disassemble it in this fashion, it'll be fine. So we'll take our channel locks, and we'll just simply unscrew. And once the unscrewing breaks free on that, you just need to take that apart. Alright. So right here we have the shaft of the wet end, and then the wet end itself. And you can kind of see on this one right here, there's a little bit of this residue on the inside. That's the kind of stuff that's building up in here, and it gets probably worse as it gets towards the bottom there. But that's the stuff you're trying to clean out. Another big giveaway is you can kind of see on this wet end right here, there's a little bit of schmeg right there. That's probably another good sign that this needs to be cleaned. So as I was saying before, we have these lip seals. That's these two little pieces of paper right there. Make sure that they keep that little ridge right there. Kind of makes it look like a hat, like a fedora. But yeah, make sure that that's there. If that gets a tear in it somewhere, that's going to be a problem. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to, well, you can do this one of a couple ways. You can either get like a cup and then soak this guy in Purple Power, just let it sit for a little bit. Or if you don't have a cup, some paper towels that's been very well soaked in Purple Power. And there you go. As you can see now, it clearly has no schmeg in it, so it's clean. And that's what you're looking for. Now the next part you got to do is you got the shaft done, but now you actually have to clean out the wet end. So same idea. You can either let it soak or use some pipe cleaners or whatever to clean up in there. You may have a black version of this where it's not white, and that's the, instead of having a ceramic sleeve, it has a carbon sleeve. Those actually tend to work a little better when you're spraying pesticides, but if you don't have it, that's fine too. And let's rinse this out with water, and we'll be right back. Alright, so we now have got this all rinsed out. As you can see, a lot less of that residue in there. I didn't really let it soak all that long. As you can see, it was pretty much done right there in real time, but that got a lot of the schmeg out of there. So before you put this back together, it's important that you re-lube the inside of the shaft, because the tolerance and spacings for how that piston goes in there, it's pretty tiny. So I use ZEP45 because it works pretty good. But any kind of like any lubricant and penetrant type stuff, don't use WD-40. That is not a lubricant. But something like ZEP, that'll work. You can find this pretty much in your automotive sections or in your like Ace Hardware's, Lowe's, Home Depot's type deep places. Alright, so now that that's been sprayed, we just pretty much put everything back together. Notice that when you put this in here, it should spin very, very easily and freely. Get those channel locks out again. Make sure that it's tight, but not like super tight or anything like that. It just needs to be tight to create that seal, but you don't want to wrench down on it too much just because of the metal on metal contact of those threads. All right. And this is the part that's kind of fun. This is more of an art than a science. So you see how it has this big spoke right here? And inside the collar of the FMI pump, right here, you should be able to see that little piece right there. We're gonna try to get that to line up. The way I typically try to do it is I try to get it, you know, lined up like on its side, like not like this where it's up and down. I try to get it closer to its side. And I pull out a little bit. Make sure again that this doesn't come out, but just give it maybe about an inch. And then it should drop right in there. Now, another thing to note too, I'm gonna pull this back out, is make sure that you're getting it to line up with this guy. So if this guy's flipped up like this, you need to flip it back down before you start putting that piston in there. So let's do that real quick. And then once we got this thing laid down on the carrier, or on the carriage bolt right there with the little nylon piece, now we just tighten with two thumb screws here to lock it down. And then that's it. It's set. Spins pretty easy. And there you go. That's a cleaning of the wet end of an FMI pump. If you guys have any questions, don't be afraid to call ADAPCO Tech Support at 855-782-3378. Thanks.